coming back to Islamic terrorism versus Christian terrorism, the stats are very clear. Historically, over the last decades, Islam has been responsible for between 65 and above 80% of terrorism-related deaths. When we come to the top 10 largest religiously motivated terrorist organizations, every single one of them is an Islamic terrorist organization. When we come to religiously motivated terrorism-related deaths, over 80% are due to Islam. In comparison to that, you can also, of course, bring up some lunatics who blow themselves up in front of some Planned Parenthood place or something like that. Yeah, very, very bad, but I don't really see the comparison there. Or some terrorists who go and shoot up some people and kill 6 people. Very, very bad, of course. But we could also talk about some, I don't know, Hindu extremists, some Jay extremists or something like that. No comparison at all. I would really suggest you read more on Jim Jones. He's my favorite cult leader. He was not a Christian. He was at first a Christian. He started out as a Christian pastor, but then he switched over and later started making basically fun of Christianity and Christian teachings and created his own religion. He was a cult leader who was no longer Christian when he did the things that he did. I'm sorry to say, but that was extremely disappointing. So,
I'm sure it was.
So, I find just one thing funny, which is that that Gnostic informant basically conceded at the very beginning the debate already, because he basically said that he is not going to make the case or cannot make the case that one is better than the other or one is worse than the other. He could, however, demonstrate how Christianity can be worse, but then he also failed to demonstrate that, so I don't really see where that is. So as I see it, and I don't want to act like Nader Ahmed here, but he has already conceded the debate topic and already lost. That's what Nader Ahmed usually does. I'm surprised he's not here somewhere. But yeah, so I already predicted the angles that he's going to take, and he did exactly that. One of those angles was that Islam made scientific contributions in the past, and the other was that Christianity was also bad a million years ago. So both of those positions have been taken, and they can be refuted with ease. But let's get into a few things here. So Neil's argument here, when refuting that certain things like the Renaissance, for example, can be attributed to Christianity, was that certain figures of the Renaissance were brought certain, I don't know, pagan elements into it. For example, he cited who did you bring up? Dante. Yeah, Dante was brought up, for example, who brought certain pagan elements or certain weird elements into his writings and all that. The funny thing is that Dante was a very devout Catholic Christian.
He wasn't.
He was a very devout Catholic Christian. He's known to be a very devout Catholic Christian who had a lot of love, a lot of divinely love. That's what he's known for. So if you're going to make the case that Christianity cannot be credited or Christians cannot be credited because a certain figure brought certain things that you may interpret as pagan or as, I don't know, not very traditional, not very normal, you could make the same case for the Islamic so-called Golden Ages. Because when you look at the so-called Islamic Golden Ages, you have people like Al-Razi or Al-Mari, for example, who are known to have been people who were part of the Islamic Golden Age of the Islamic science, but they were extremely critical of religious dogma. One of them, I fail to remember which one it was, Amari or Razi, described Muslims basically as extremely obnoxious, annoying people who will just shut you down and try to kill you whenever you tell them that something they do is or something they teach is wrong, which, I don't know, it sounds kind of familiar, but I wouldn't say the same thing now, of course. But so you have these, you can make the very same point about the Islamic Golden Ages as well, that those people, or that the Islamic Golden Ages included lots of people who were critical of Islam or who were very unconventional from Islamic standards. On the other hand, you had Ibn Haytham, for example, whom you mentioned. He also is known to have said on many occasions that when there is science and there is religious dogma, you should prefer science over religious dogma. You should go with that, for example, which is something that is not acceptable to religious Muslims, is not acceptable to religious Muslim scholars. I can cite a very, very well-known Islamic exegesis of the Quran known as Tafsir al-Jalalain, which is from the 15th century. Tafsir al-Jalalain It has the name Tafsir al-Jalalain, which means the tafsir of the two Jalals, because it was written by two guys who both were known as Jalal. So they come and make a commentary on the Quran. What you can find in this tafsir in the 15th century, the tafsir says, when it comments on certain verses that describe the world or describe the earth as flat, he says that on a plain reading, the Quran is understood to say that the earth is flat. And it then points out, and this is the consensus of the scholars of the faith, as opposed to those scholars of science who propose that it was a ball or a sphere. So this is the stance of Islamic scholars, according to Islamic scholars in the 15th century. But the 15th century, ironically, funnily, comes after the Islamic Golden Ages, where we had this great explosion of science. Well, it turns out that lots of those Islamic scientists in the Golden Ages were people who didn't really very much agree with Islam or with Islamic findings. Or if they did, if they made propositions that didn't agree with the Islamic perspectives, you had disagreements from actual Islamic scholars who dismissed some of their unconventional ideas, such as the ridiculous idea that the earth is a sphere and not a flat bed on the back of a whale, as something that is not something that Muslims believe in. So, speaking of the Golden Ages, my friend said that we speak of an Islamic Golden Age, but there is no Christian Golden Age. Now, I hate to break it to you, but it's actually very funny. We speak of an Islamic Golden Age because we can basically narrow the one time where Muslims actually contributed to science down to a little frame of a few centuries where they loosely made contributions to science. In the Christian world, we can't really point at one single time where Christians contributed to science and then move on from that, because in the Christian history we have multiple periods of development. We have the Carolingian Renaissance, we have the High Golden Ages between the 11th and 3rd centuries. We have the later developments, the Renaissance from the 14th to the 17th centuries. We have the Scientific Revolution, as said, which was led by Christians. Renaissance was led by Christians, by many devout Christians, and so on. Which is why, if we wanted to point at a Christian golden age by the same standard, we would have to point at the entirety of Christian history, probably. He suggested that Ibn Firnas, a wannabe scientist, actually developed I didn't really catch that part, but developed a flying machine which inspired Da Vinci. That's not true. There's no single evidence that Da Vinci was actually inspired by him. And he also didn't develop a successful device. So he then suggested that Islam got certain bad ideas of oppressing other people, oppressing religious groups, oppressing women, and so on from Christianity, because Islam is an offshoot of Judeo-Christian religion. This is wrong. If you actually study the history of Islam, you will learn very quickly that Islam did not emerge from Judaism and Christianity. Unlike Christianity, which emerged from Judaism, Islam emerged from a polytheistic Arab culture and then adopted or appropriated and stole Christian and Jewish ideas, which it then began to slowly include into its text. But at the core, it was still very much a polytheistic Arab religion, which is why its focus on fighting and killing and raping everyone is very different from Judaism and Christianity.
David Koresh, Jim Jones. So these things do happen in the name of Christianity. It's in Christianity influencing their choices.
Jim Jones wasn't a Christian.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Who else was he? So another thing you said was the Crusades was just the purpose of defense. Purpose of defense. What do you think Deus Vult is? It's like it's the Latin version of Allah Akbar, and they went into the East after 400 years. After 400 years of Islamic control of major cities like Alexandria, Jerusalem, Antioch, Syria, and others, after 400 years, actually I think it's longer than that, it's like 600, 700 years later, then they go and reconquest, right? But that's like saying England should have the right to come back and reconquest the United States, because it was only like 300 years ago.
All right. So several things here. I just quickly had to listen to what Matt Walsh actually said. What he said was that historically 16-year-olds getting pregnant or something was quite normal. It was something that actually was seen as contributing to societal growth or something like that. I haven't listened to the whole thing. I have to listen to it, but that's basically what he's saying. This is, of course, I was a little bit surprised here because when he brought this up in comparison to Muslim preachers suggesting that marrying 3-year-olds or 6-year-olds or 9-year-olds and so on is totally cool, I thought that Matt Walsh said something really, really, really bad. He's talking about 16-year-olds.
All right, that's fair.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but so there are lots of Western countries where 16 is actually above the age of consent, or is the age of consent. In America, we have, it's generally at 18. That's not universal across the Western world, but comparing that to stuff that Muslim scholars and apologists have said is a little bit absurd. So, coming back to Islamic terrorism versus Christian terrorism, the stats are very clear. Historically, over the last decades, Islam has been responsible for between 65 and above 80% of terrorism-related deaths. When we come to the top 10 largest religiously motivated terrorist organizations, every single one of them is an Islamic terrorist organization. When we come to religiously motivated terrorism-related deaths, over 80% are due to Islam. In comparison to that, you can also, of course, bring up some lunatics who blow themselves up in front of some Planned Parenthood place or something like that. Yeah, very, very bad, but I don't really see the comparison there. Or some terrorists who go and shoot up some people and kill 6 people. Very, very bad, of course. But we could also talk about some, I don't know, Hindu extremists, some Jay extremists or something like that. No comparison at all. I would really suggest you read more on Jim Jones. He's my favorite cult leader. He was not a Christian. He was at first a Christian. He started out as a Christian pastor, but then he switched over and later started making basically fun of Christianity and Christian teachings and created his own religion. He was a cult leader who was no longer Christian when he did the things that he did. You said that I said that the Christian Crusades were defensive. I don't remember saying that, but I would say that they were mostly defensive. And they were mostly a reaction to Islamic expansions. But did I actually say that they were? Did I actually bring this up? I don't even remember. But the Christian Crusades were actually a direct response to Islamic expansionism and imperialism, when the Muslim forces relentlessly and brutally expanded into Christian territories and took over lands and violated people's rights and prevented them from going about their pilgrimage and so on. The Christian world repeatedly shouted out for help, asked for help. Eventually, the Western Christian world responded, which brought about the Crusades. The Crusades had some there were some things that were really bad about the Crusades. The Crusaders did some things here and there independently. However, the major motivation between the Crusades is a very noble one, and I would say that it is entirely justified. Certain aspects of it may not be justified, such as Crusaders branching out and cracking down on the Eastern Roman Empire and destroying it, or attacking certain Jewish communities, or engaging in some massacres here and there. But the primary motivation behind the Crusades was a very noble one. You cannot say the very same thing about Islam, which was merely about expanding and conquering territory and killing people and imposing Islamic rule. Islam is not defensive, Islam is aggressive, which Muslims have acknowledged, and which also, as I just mentioned earlier, Ibn Khaldun, the Muslim historian and sociologist, he himself acknowledged it. He said this is what makes Islam different from the others, that we have the duty to go and fight and to spread the religion by will or by force. We can argue forever. Muslims themselves have said it. Islam is an expansionist, offensive, aggressive religion. There is no comparison at all. Finally, to the point of Islam's origins. Islam emerged from a society that was polytheist, that was around the cube of the Kaaba, which was dedicated to polytheistic gods. Muhammad came out in a polytheistic society and started creating his own religion by whatever he saw from the Christians and Jews. It is still at the core a polytheistic religion. You have to look just at one aspect of it, which is the Kaaba. The Kaaba has nothing at all to do with Christians and Jews. The Kaaba has no connection to Abrahamic religion. It is a polytheistic object which Muhammad adopted. What he did is he did include certain elements, or he did appropriate, which I also already mentioned, certain elements and certain teachings that belonged to Jews and Christians, and often misunderstood them or exaggerated them. For example, in the Quran it says that the the Jews are condemned because they say that Ezra is the son of Allah. That's what it says in chapter 9, verse 30. It says the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, and the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. May Allah destroy them. How deluded are they? There is not a single Jew in. We have a Jew here. What's up? Shalom. There's not a single Jew recorded in history who has ever believed that Ezra is the son of God. There is simply no such thing. It is completely ridiculous, completely made up. This is because Islam emerged from a polytheistic, non-Christian, non-Jewish, ignorant society and started imposing itself and making itself out to be the continuation of Judaism and Christianity. It simply is not. It is a religion of ignorance and destruction.
Yo. Nihilism is a waste of time. Stick it with me. Nihilism is a waste of time. Nihilism is a waste of time. Misbehave in life.
What do you represent? You have any sense? Think that you can just pretend and live life like it doesn't end? That's just a mechanism, wonder why you never fit in. And when you do, it's always with the devil's little minions. It's clear to me, you too scared to prepare to leave. If your life is any meaning, you lost it to fear and grief. How can you judge another one because of their beliefs, when yours about logical is chewing rocks with your teeth? Don't waste my time if you believe in nothing, that is fine. Don't waste my time if you believe in nothing, that is fine. Don't waste my time if you believe in nothing, that is fine. But in time, you see that nothing is a lie.
Nihilism is a waste of time. Nihilism is a waste of time. Nihilism is a waste of time. Just an excuse to misbehave in life.
Lost or forgotten time, what's on my mind is not just minor. I'm trying to spread the love, the opposite of Oppenheimer. What's behind the conscious mind is locked to find a way inside. You gotta try to not deny your faith, then you wake your mind up. You're not alive by chance, this ain't an act. Can you see that? When you think back, do you think that one day you'll blink and then you'll see black and that's it? Is that why you wallow in that pit, feeling hollow cause you feel like tomorrow could be it? I wanna know.